The manila envelope hit Sandra's chest and fell to her feet. 200 guests froze mid-conversation as the DJ's music died. Sandra stared down at the papers spilling onto the polished marble floor of Eko Hotels' grand ballroom, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. Leonard stood 3 feet away, his designer tuxedo immaculate, his smile twisted with something that looked almost like satisfaction. "Pick them up," he said, his voice cutting through the sudden silence. "Sign them. Right here, right now, in front of everyone." Sandra's hands trembled as she bent down, her emerald green dress rustling in the quiet. The papers felt heavy in her fingers. Divorce petition. Her eyes caught the words but couldn't make sense of them. This was her birthday party. Her 32nd birthday. The event Leonard himself had insisted on hosting, sparing no expense for the 5-tier cake, the live band, the imported flowers that filled every corner of the venue. "Leonard, what are you doing?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Around them, guests shifted uncomfortably, expensive jewelry glinting under the crystal chandeliers. She recognized faces from their social circle, business partners, family members, all witnessing this nightmare unfold. "What I should have done months ago." Leonard's laugh was sharp and theatrical. He turned to address their audience, playing to the crowd like an actor who'd rehearsed his lines. "You all see this woman? This woman who came from a 1-bedroom apartment in Surrey and thought she could fit into my world." The whispers started immediately, a low hum of shock and scandal that spread through the ballroom like wildfire. Sandra felt heat flood her face, but she stood frozen, the divorce papers clutched in her shaking hands. "Leonard, stop this right now." Rose's voice rang out as she pushed through the crowd, her red gown blazing like fire. "What the hell is wrong with you?" But Leonard ignored her, his attention fixed on Sandra with the kind of focused cruelty that comes from knowing exactly where to strike. "I made you somebody, Sandra. I gave you my name, my connections, my money. I turned you from a nobody into Mrs. Leonard Okoro. And what did you give me? Nothing. You couldn't even give me a child." The words landed like physical blows. Sandra felt something crack inside her chest, but she refused to let tears fall. Not here. Not in front of these vultures who would feast on her pain for weeks in their private clubs and dinner parties. 7 years, Leonard continued, warming to his theme as cameras began flashing around them. 7 years of pretending you belonged in rooms like this. But you never did you? You can put a designer dress on a village girl, but she'll never be quality. My mother was right about you from the beginning. That's enough. James Adeyemi's voice boomed from the back of the room. Sandra's lawyer pushed through the crowd, his face tight with anger. "Leonard, have you lost your mind? Stay out of this, James. This is between me and my soon-to-be ex-wife." Leonard turned back to Sandra, pulling a pen from his jacket pocket and holding it out. "Sign the papers, Sandra. Make this easy on yourself. I'm even letting you keep the car and giving you 6 months in the house. That's more generous than you deserve." Sandra looked at the pen, then at Leonard's face. In 7 years of marriage, she'd watched this man transform from the charming businessman who'd swept her off her feet into someone cold and calculating. The emotional abuse had started slowly, small criticisms that grew into constant belittlement. He'd isolated her from friends, made her doubt herself, convinced her that his money and status were all she had. But standing here now, papers in hand, something shifted inside her. The fear and shame that had kept her silent for so long began to burn away, replaced by something else. Clarity. "You want me to sign these papers?" Sandra's voice was quiet but steady. The ballroom had gone so silent she could hear her own heartbeat. "That's what I said, isn't it?" Leonard smirked, confidence radiating from him. He thought he'd won. He'd humiliated her completely, reduced her to nothing in front of Lagos high society. "Unless you want to drag this out and make it messier, I have lawyers who will make sure you leave with even less." Sandra looked around the ballroom at all the faces watching her. Some looked uncomfortable, others curious. A few seemed to be enjoying the spectacle. She found Rose's eyes and saw fury there, and love. Then her gaze landed on James, who gave her the slightest nod, as if to say she was stronger than this moment. She turned back to Leonard and did something she hadn't done in months. She smiled. "Before I sign anything," Sandra said, her voice growing stronger as she straightened her shoulders, "I have an announcement to make." Leonard's smirk faltered. "What are you talking about?" "Today isn't just my birthday, Leonard." Sandra's hands stopped shaking as she held the divorce papers up for everyone to see. "Today was also the reading of my Uncle Emeka's will." The room shifted. Whispers started again, but this time with a different energy. Sandra saw Leonard's face begin to change, the confidence cracking at the edges. "My uncle passed away 3 months ago in London. Some of you knew him. He was a successful property developer who never married and had no children. His lawyers have been settling his estate." Sandra's voice carried across the ballroom now, clear and strong. "The will was read this morning. My uncle left everything to me, his entire estate." "Sandra, what are you?" Leonard started, but she talked over him. $2 million, Leonard. I inherited $2 million. The ballroom erupted. Voices rose in shock and excitement. Camera phones appeared from every direction. Leonard stood frozen, his face cycling through expressions, confusion to realization to something like panic. "You're lying," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. James stepped forward, pulling a document from his jacket. "I have the will right here, Leonard. Verified and notarized this morning. Sandra is now the sole beneficiary of Emeka Okonkwo's estate, including liquid assets totaling $2 million, plus property holdings in London and Abuja." The color drained from Leonard's face. Sandra watched him process what this meant, saw the calculations running behind his eyes. He'd just publicly divorced a woman who was now independently wealthy. He'd humiliated the woman who no longer needed his money, his name, or his connections. "Sandra, wait." Leonard reached for her arm, but she stepped back. "Let's talk about this. We don't need to be hasty. This divorce thing, I was angry about some business issues and I took it out on you. We can work through this." "Work through it." Sandra's laugh was sharp and bitter. "You just told 200 people I was a nobody from Surulere who couldn't give you children. You threw divorce papers at me on my birthday and told me to sign them in front of everyone we know. I didn't mean it like that. You know how I get sometimes. We all say things we don't mean when we're stressed." Leonard's voice had changed completely, all the cruelty replaced with desperation. He turned to the crowd, forcing a smile. "Everyone knows marriage has its ups and downs, right? Sandra and I just need to talk privately." "There's nothing to talk about." Sandra folded the divorce papers carefully. "You wanted this divorce, Leonard. You planned this whole humiliation. Well, congratulations. You got what you wanted. Sandra, please, think about what you're doing. Think about us, our life together. Our life." Sandra's voice rose for the first time, 7 years of suppressed anger finally breaking through. "What life, Leonard? The one where you criticized everything I did? The one where you made me feel like I was lucky you even looked at me? The one where you blamed me for something that was medically both our issue, but you made it my shame to carry?" Rose appeared at Sandra's side, taking her arm. "Come on, Sandra. You don't need to stay here another minute." But Sandra wasn't done. She'd spent 7 years being quiet, being grateful, being small. "Not anymore. You wanted to embarrass me, Leonard. You wanted everyone to see you throw me away like I was nothing. But the truth is, I was never nothing. I was just married to a man who needed me to be nothing so he could feel like something." Leonard grabbed her hand, his grip tight. "Sandra, listen to me. We can fix this. I'll call off the divorce. We'll go home, sort this out properly. You're upset. You're not thinking clearly." Sandra pulled her hand free. "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. You want to call off the divorce? Too late. But don't worry. I'll sign your papers. I'll sign them tomorrow in my lawyer's office where we can do this properly, legally, without any more drama." "No, wait, we should." "It's over, Leonard." Sandra's voice was final. "You made sure of that tonight. The only question is whether you want to handle this quietly from here, or if you want to make more of a scene than you already have." She turned to leave, Rose's arm linked with hers, but Leonard wasn't finished. He raised his voice, playing to the crowd one more time. You think you're better than me now because of some inheritance? You think money makes you quality? You're still the same girl from Surelier who needed me to. That's enough. James stepped between them, his voice hard. Leonard, I suggest you stop talking before you say something that affects the divorce settlement even more negatively for you. What's that supposed to mean? It means, James said quietly, that there are 200 witnesses here who just watched you verbally abuse your wife in public. That tends to matter in divorce proceedings, especially when there are significant assets involved now on both sides. Leonard's face went pale. Sandra could see him finally understanding the full scope of what he'd done. He'd planned this humiliation assuming she had nothing, would be nothing without him. But now she had money of her own, and he'd just demonstrated to a room full of Lagos elite exactly what kind of man he was. Sandra, please. His voice was almost a whisper now. Don't do this. I love you. Sandra stopped at the ballroom entrance and looked back at him. 7 years of marriage, and this was the first time he'd said those words in months. Not because he felt them, but because he needed them. You never loved me, Leonard. You loved having me. There's a difference. She paused, then added, and for what it's worth, I hope you find someone who makes you happy. Someone who makes you want to be better instead of someone you need to tear down to feel powerful. She walked out of the ballroom with Rose and James flanking her, leaving Leonard standing alone in a sea of whispers and camera phones. The birthday party of the year had just become the scandal of the season, but Sandra felt lighter than she had in years. Outside, the Lagos night air was warm and humid. Sandra could still hear the buzz of conversation from inside, could imagine the gossip already spreading through social media and WhatsApp groups across the city. This would be the talk of every dinner party and business lunch for weeks. Are you okay? Rose asked, squeezing her arm. I will be, Sandra said, and meant it. James handed her his card, though she already had his number. Call me tomorrow. We'll start the divorce proceedings properly and make sure your inheritance is protected. Leonard has no claim to any of it since it was willed to you individually, but we'll want everything documented correctly. Thank you, James, for everything. You were incredible in there, he said quietly. I've known you for 5 years, and I've never seen you stand up to him like that. I was tired of being small, Sandra said simply. He wanted me to feel like nothing, but you can only make someone feel like nothing if they believe they are. I stopped believing it tonight. Rose hugged her fiercely. That's my girl. Now let's get you home, away from all these fake people with their cameras. We'll have real cake, real champagne, and celebrate your birthday properly. But Sandra shook her head. Not home. That's his house, his space. I'll get a hotel tonight. Tomorrow I'll figure out what comes next. Then we'll get a hotel together, Rose insisted. The presidential suite at Eko Hotel. We'll order room service, watch terrible movies, and plot your amazing new life. For the first time that evening, Sandra laughed genuinely. That sounds perfect. As they waited for the valet to bring Rose's car, Sandra's phone began buzzing with messages. Friends, family, people she hadn't spoken to in years, all reaching out after seeing videos from the party already circulating online. She turned off her phone and slipped it into her purse. The whole city will be talking about this by morning, James observed. Let them talk, Sandra said. For once, I don't care what people think. I know who I am now, and that's enough. The next morning, Sandra woke up in the hotel suite with sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Lagos harbor. Rose was still asleep on the other bed, and for a moment, Sandra just lay there processing everything that had happened. Her marriage was over. Her life as Mrs. Leonard Okoro was finished. But strangely, she didn't feel devastated. She felt free. Her phone, which she turned back on, showed 247 messages, 63 missed calls, and countless social media notifications. The video of Leonard throwing the divorce papers and her subsequent announcement had gone viral. #BirthdayBetrayal was trending on Nigerian Twitter. There were also 15 missed calls from Leonard and a series of increasingly desperate text messages. Sandra, please call me. We need to talk. Don't make any hasty decisions. I'm sorry about last night. I wasn't myself. Can we at least discuss this face to face? I'm not signing anything until we talk. Sandra deleted the messages without responding. She had nothing more to say to Leonard Okoro. Instead, she called James. Can we meet this morning? I want to start the divorce proceedings immediately and discuss my options for the inheritance. Of course. My office at 11. Perfect. And James? Thank you for having my back last night. Always, Sandra. You deserved better than what he put you through. Over the next 3 months, Sandra's life transformed completely. The divorce proceedings were contentious, with Leonard fighting for a share of her inheritance despite James's clear evidence that he had no legal claim to it. The man who'd thrown papers at her and demanded she sign immediately was now doing everything possible to drag out the process. But Sandra was done playing his games. She hired the best lawyers, documented every instance of emotional abuse she'd endured, and presented a case so solid that Leonard's attorneys advised him to settle. The final terms gave Sandra everything she'd brought into the marriage plus a significant portion of their shared assets, including the apartment in Eko she'd always loved. Leonard kept his business and the house in Banana Island, but his reputation had taken a hit. Business partners distanced themselves from him after the viral video, not wanting to be associated with someone who'd publicly humiliated his wife. Meanwhile, Sandra took her $2 million and invested wisely. With James's help and guidance, she started a boutique real estate consulting firm focusing on helping first-time property buyers navigate the complex Lagos market. She called it Emeka Properties, in honor of the uncle whose faith in her had changed everything. You have an eye for this? James told her during one of their business meetings, which had become more frequent and less formal. You understand what people need, not just what they think they want. That's rare in this industry. Sandra smiled, looking around her new office in Lekki. It was smaller than Leonard's company headquarters, but it was hers. I spent 7 years being told I didn't understand anything. Turns out I understand quite a lot when someone isn't constantly undermining me. He was a fool, James said quietly. Any man who had you and didn't treasure you was a fool. Their eyes met across the desk, and Sandra felt something shift between them. But she wasn't ready yet. She needed to be whole on her own first before she could let anyone else in. Rose, of course, noticed everything. James is in love with you, you know? She said over drinks at their favorite wine bar 6 months after the birthday disaster. I know, Sandra admitted. But I need time. I need to remember who I am without a man defining me. Smart girl. Make him wait. Make him prove he sees you as an equal, not a project or a prize. Sandra's business grew steadily. Her first major success came when she helped a young couple find their dream home in Lekki Phase 1, navigating a complicated transaction that other agents had told them was impossible. They referred her to friends who referred her to others, and soon Emeka Properties was handling multiple deals a month. She hired staff, rented a larger office, and started making a name for herself in Lagos real estate circles. Not as Leonard Okoro's ex-wife, but as Sandra Okoro, successful businesswoman in her own right. Leonard tried to reach out several times. He showed up at her office once, looking worn and older than his 38 years. His business had suffered after their divorce, losing several major contracts and investors. The man who'd once radiated confidence now seemed diminished. Sandra, can we talk? He asked, standing awkwardly in her reception area. She came out of her office, professional and distant. Leonard, what can I do for you? I just wanted to see you, to apologize properly for what I did. That night, the things I said, I was wrong about everything. Yes, you were. I've lost a lot since then. Business, respect, friends. I realize now what I threw away when I threw you away. Sandra looked at him calmly. You didn't throw me away, Leonard. You set me free, and I'm grateful for it. Sandra, please, can't we try again? Start over? I'm different now. I've learned from my mistakes. You learned you made a mistake because I turned out to have money, Sandra said gently but firmly. If I hadn't inherited anything, you'd be fine with how you treated me. That's not growth, Leonard. That's regret over a bad business decision. He flinched. That's not fair, isn't it? You publicly humiliated me because you thought I was worthless without you. Now you want me back because I proved I'm not. But I don't need you to validate my worth anymore. I know what I'm worth, and it has nothing to do with you. She turned to go back to her office, but paused. I hope you find happiness, Leonard. I genuinely do. But you won't find it by trying to reclaim what you destroyed. You'll find it by becoming someone who wouldn't destroy it in the first place. After he left, Sandra sat at her desk and realized she felt nothing for him anymore. Not anger, not hurt, not even pity. Just indifference. He was a chapter in her story that had ended, and she was writing new chapters now. A year after the birthday betrayal, Sandra stood in her new apartment overlooking the Lagos coastline. She'd bought it herself with money from her business, not her inheritance. The place was smaller than the Eko apartment but felt more like home than anywhere she'd lived with Leonard. Rose arrived with champagne. Happy birthday, my darling. How does 33 feel? Like freedom, Sandra said, clinking glasses with her best friend. Like possibility. The doorbell rang, and Sandra smiled, knowing who it was. James arrived with flowers and that quiet, respectful warmth he always carried. Happy birthday, Sandra, he said, and the way he said it made it feel like a celebration, not a reminder of trauma. They had dinner together, the three of them laughing and telling stories. At some point, James took Sandra's hand across the table, and she let him. They were taking things slowly, building something real based on respect and genuine friendship. You know what the best part of this year has been? Sandra said as they watched the sunset over the water. Learning that I didn't need saving. I needed freedom to save myself. Rose raised her glass. To Sandra Okoro, who turned her worst moment into her greatest transformation. To new beginnings, James added. Sandra smiled and raised her own glass. To knowing your worth and never settling for less. As she looked out over Lagos, at the city that had witnessed both her humiliation and her rebirth, Sandra felt grateful for everything. Even the pain, especially the pain, because it had taught her that she was stronger than she'd ever imagined, that she could stand on her own, and that the opinion that mattered most was the one she held of herself. Leonard Okoro had tried to destroy her that night at Eko Hotels. Instead, he'd freed her to become someone extraordinary. And for that, strangely enough, she was thankful. The end. If this story touched you, please like this video, drop a comment below sharing your thoughts about strength and self-worth, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories about overcoming life's challenges. Your support helps us share these important messages with more people who need to hear them. Remember, you are never defined by how others treat you. You are defined by how you rise after they try to bring you down.